Welcome to Surviving VR Wave 1. My name's Daniel Burwen. It's an honor to be here at South by Southwest, and I'm really stoked you guys showed up today. I have my Twitter handle up, so if you guys want to tell me your opinions about what I have to say today, I would really love to hear from you. Positive, negative, this is intended to be a dialogue, so please don't hesitate to let me know your thoughts. All right, so this talk is really going to be focusing on 2014 to 2016, and you might be wondering, why are we talking about 2014 to 2016 when it's 2018? Well, I think it allows us to reflect a little bit on what happened during those days of VR. This is the first time we really came together as an industry to explore a new medium in a mass way. And I think it's a way to really pull insight from hindsight. People get excited about taking the next step, I think, without stopping to think about where we were and what we've been doing. So really the intention of this talk is to capture the learnings from VR Wave 1 and how to take them into VR Wave 2. Just a show of hands, how many people here work in traditional TV or film? Okay, and how many people in this room have actually produced a piece of immersive or VR content? Oh, awesome. Okay, great. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys on Twitter. All right, so let me start a little bit about my background just so you guys know who I am. So I draw my experiences and philosophy from a very diverse array of places I've worked. I started out in AAA games on franchises like James Bond and Tony Hawk. I built out theme park attractions with Imagineering, and I consulted on franchise expansion for Clone Wars. I've designed immersive retail experiences for the Westfield Mall and feature interfaces for Sony. And for 2 years, I worked as the director of experience for Jaunt. I led the design efforts in building out our first in-app HMD experience. And I would later build out the third-party publishing program for the company called Jaunt Publishing. And I got to work a lot with the creative community around VR at the time. And most recently, I was working with Here Be Dragons as a consultant. So I'm no longer at Jaunt. I now run a consulting group called Adjacent. And the passion of Adjacent really is to figure out how to bring design thinking to the Hollywood industries, to make immersive content creation processes more efficient, and what we hope is to really produce awesome results. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. I got a really comprehensive view of the VR landscape in 2014 to 2016. Like I said, we have some hindsight now, so I think it's important to take a moment to reflect. In this talk, we're going to cover 4 areas. We're going to talk about the challenges of combining the cultures of media and technology. We'll look at the different types of creators coming together to create in the space. We'll look at ways to bring these creators together to build new types of teams. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the process going forward as we try to shape this industry for the future. So in terms of language, we were using the term VR in 2014 to 2016. It's now XR to kind of cover all the Rs. And so for the purpose of this talk, consider them basically interchangeable. All right, so I look at the evolution of media along 3 primary timelines. I break it down into arts and media, technology, and audiences. And audiences is kind of a funny word because you could also say users or consumers, but it's basically people and culture at large. Highly abstracted, this is kind of how the established formats have gone in the past. The takeaway here really is that the established formats that we take for granted have been around for a very long time, like print and film and television. They've evolved over decades, if not longer. By contrast, immersive has really just started. It's basically just been a blink. So let's take a look at how technology in the space has evolved over the blink. So we've seen a lot of change over the past few years. The space of technology is rapidly moving forward because the path is very clear. We want it to be cheaper, we want it to be lighter, we want higher resolution and better tracking. You can literally see the evolution of this stuff happening in real time, as I'm sure many of you have working in the space. So the progression we've seen from a cardboard box with your phone to a plastic box with a strap to adding hands and movement and to a dorky visor to ugly glasses and then sexy glasses is pretty predictable, I'd say. And eventually we're going to get contact lenses and God knows what else. It's going to be an interesting ride. But the point that I'm making here is that we've seen a tremendous amount of change. We've gone from a cardboard box on our face to ugly glasses in like 5 years. That is a big jump. That is a lot of change. And I think one of the challenges, and I'm sure you guys, let me know your thoughts on this, but like the challenges from the media side is that our tools are changing really quickly. And the pace of technological change makes it, it creates a lot of new opportunity. but it's a dramatic change going from a box on your face or 360 video to AR glasses. So the third factor, of course, is that audiences are changing as well. Ultimately, if people don't care about these things, it's not really going to matter so much. So roughly outlined in terms of generations, you can kind of see how that's been evolving. Consumer behavior is largely in flux right now. And I think the biggest thing to be paying attention to are centennials. How many people here know about centennials or Gen Z? Okay, a few hands. So in our research, we've been looking into these guys a lot, and they're really different than millennials. They grew up with a smartphone as their primary device for all the things. They kind of shirk prior platforms and formats, so they're not on Facebook, they don't use email, and they don't watch TV. So they're really different in that capacity. They're seeking experiences over material ownership, so if you can Instagram it, they're going to be there. They're going to shape the media consumption habits of the future and immersive media as it takes shape and matures. So they're really important to pay attention to. So at times, these timelines come together and converge, and we try to see if these things are going to mesh together. So technology opens the door for new forms of arts and media. Companies are then formed to offer those out to the public, and then we'll see if consumers catch on. So, essentially in 2014 to 2016, we got what I'm calling our first major convergence. I know that VR has been going on a lot longer than this, but this is really when we tried to do, I think, a mass consumer offering for the medium. So what was happening at this time is that we all had mobile phones. We were using those mobile phones with platforms like Facebook and YouTube. Facebook and YouTube started supporting 360 video. The first generation of cheap headsets came out, so you could watch the 360 videos in VR. And the VR hype cycle, as I'm sure you know, was in full swing. And that is what I am calling VR Wave 1. You guys with me so far? Cool. All right, so I like to start the story of VR Wave 1 with a conversation about culture, bias, and expectation. So the story of 360 video is really the story of two cities, namely Silicon Valley and Hollywood. It's not the most natural pairing, to be honest. It's actually been a little bit awkward. By way of example, Conan O'Brien came to visit the Google campus in 2010, and I'm just going to show you a little snippet of how that went. So,
how y'all doing, everybody? How are you, Google? Who the hell are you?
Well, welcome to Google.
Welcome to Google.
It's absolutely great to have you
Very
here.
nice that you could be here.
Yeah,
this is exciting.
Thank you.
People are so thrilled to see you.
I noticed that.
What a rare honor for them to see you in the flesh.
Yes, on behalf of all the Googlers, let me express
You
a
call
very
yourself
warm welcome.
Googlers? Is that
We
it?
do. We do. Aren't we Googlers?
Let's address
yes,
that.
Googlers? Yeah.
No. Let's start there. We can do better than Googler, okay? We need something cooler, especially for the guys when they're walking into a bar. You know what I'm saying?
What would you suggest?
I'm a Googler. you don't have to say that to like I'm a G-man or something. You got to get something else going, because Googler.
Well, welcome.
Well, we're pretty much done here, aren't we?
We are done. We are done.
You seem stunned and unhappy.
Yes.
awesome. Okay, moving on. Anyway, so you get the idea. Basically, it hasn't been the most natural pairing. By the way, that's an hour-long video. I recommend looking up on YouTube. It's awkwardly great. But in short, we have very different approaches to how we talk and interact, how we look at value, and how we make things. So, for a long time, our worlds didn't really cross over much. You had a box in your living room. You had a box in your office. One was for watching. One was for doing. Our worlds are pretty far apart. And over time, we've seen these two boxes essentially become one. This transition accelerated rapidly in 2013 when Netflix started developing original content. And Netflix was doing this to attract subscribers, which was a fundamentally different business model from film and television from before. And we were really witnessing the birth of subscription video on demand services, or SVOD, which would rapidly change the model going forward. The convergence of these two worlds is getting tighter and tighter and more intense, especially as seen by the centennials from before. Smartphones are completely changing the way, not only how we interact with media, but also how we interact with each other and pretty much everything else. So essentially, we've gone from this to this. And I think what's really been driving this change is this idea of content. So, content's kind of a tricky word because it can mean different things to different people. I think content is different than media. We tend to pay for media with money, and we have names for different types of media, like music and video games and TV shows and books. But now we all just call it content. And instead of paying for it with money, we are paying for it with primarily our attention. And I'd say ever increasingly, more and more so, we are paying for it with our attention. Another way to parse the content media divide is the concept of publisher versus platform. This is also an interesting sort of bias to look at here. So, Hollywood really sees content through the eyes of a publisher. So content's highly curated, it's high production value, it's based on established IP, it's paid for by subscription. The economy of an SVOD platform is different than other types of platforms. And SVODs are only as good as their libraries. Silicon Valley, on the other hand, sees content through the eyes of a platform. Content is a fuel for eyeballs. We pay for it with data and and ads or both. The volume of content is what matters, not the quality. And platforms are only as good as the time you spend on them. They just want your attention. So it's a different kind of parlance there. All right. So next, let's look at the different types of creators who were making during VR Wave 1. I break down creators into 3 different groups. So we have the avant-garde, the early adopter, and the mainstream. And it's worth noting that this lens, I think, can actually go a lot wider than just creators. You can also look at businesses, and you can look at consumers as well. Another way to parse this is to look at it as like a train. So for simplification, I think of curators, sort of in this analogy. So the avant-garde is leading the front of the train, with experimentation. The early adopters are translating those examples into something for, that's scalable for consumption by the mainstream. And the mainstream are essentially waiting for those things to make money. So let's take a closer look at these demographics. All right, so the avant-garde. So these guys really just want to push the boundaries of art and technology as far as it can possibly go. They're happy to show in art galleries and film festivals and museums, far away from what consumers can really, at scale, actually purchase and experience in their homes. These guys are really motivated by shaping culture rather than developing a commercial industry. And they're really driven by gaining influence and prestige within the other avant-garde VR creator communities, not for profit necessarily. So Tribeca and Sundance are like some of the most celebrated showcases for the avant-garde. And this is where you get to see the absolute cutting edge in experimentation between art and technology. They're pretty exclusive events. You're lucky if a few hundred people get to see your work here. And mostly your audience is other members from the avant-garde. So if there's some cool new tech to play with as a storyteller, the avant-garde is going to be all over it. And as some of you probably know, the avant-garde brought VR to Sundance for the first time in 2012. It was a full room scale system brought in from the MXR lab, mixed reality lab at USC. And it was actually based off an early Oculus Rift prototype. So if you're lucky enough to go out and experience these pieces of work, they can be really powerful and profound. Tree on the left, it uses all sorts of extrasensory pieces to make you feel like you're embodying a tree in the rainforest. There's like a subpack to vibrate your chest. There's mist and wind and 4D effects. It's really special and obviously something you can only have there. Draw Me Close at Tribeca was done in conjunction with the London Theatre Company. And you had a live actor in the space with you interacting and driving the avatar, and they actually at one point gave you a hug. So it was really profound to experience that, and these things obviously are not going to scale, but that's the nature of the work of the avant-garde. All right, so early adopters. So these guys are interested in a sustainable career. They do want to matter to consumers. They really want to pioneer something new and catch the next wave. They're committed to VR. They really want to see it turn into a commercially viable industry. They're basically taking a bet on the future to profit later on when things mature. They believe in the power of the internet as a means of distribution. They iterate quickly. They're very knowledgeable, and they're very happy to share their information and learnings, through online communities. So they use the web to build audience. They use the web to participate and connect with each other. They're very scrappy and experimental. They're very quick to learn and develop new workflow. But they can lack access to high-end equipment, and their output can lack visual polish and production value. So in Wave 1, inventive and noteworthy techniques for grammar for the medium were largely coming from these guys. They're really the indie side of the community. So you did have diamonds in the rough that I think could be, sort of refined. Okay, so last, mainstream. And in the parlance of VR Wave 1 and 360 video, I'm really talking about mainstream filmmakers and established filmmakers. So Doug Liman, who directed the Bourne series, Go, Swingers, and other films that I love, he was part of the Invisible series at Jaunt. And people like Doug Liman, they really apply filmmaking as a basis and philosophy for their creative approach because that's what they've been steeped in for many, many years. Their careers are already established. They have reputations to maintain. They may not be fully committed to VR yet and incentivized to take risks like the other parts of the train. They're awesome with scripts and actors and lighting and production and engaging with the Hollywood machinery and business structure. These are all highly valuable things for creating compelling 360 video content. And they carry cachet and funding with consumers, but mostly funding partners. So they carry a lot of weight there. The challenge, however, though, is that established filmmakers never had to forge entirely new storytelling grammar before. They can be ignorant of other techniques and approaches coming from Silicon Valley, like user experience and game engines and software development and creating minimally viable products and user testing and iterative design and data and all these other factors that are really going to become critical to this industry maturing in the future. And VR is not their chief focus. It's something they might be doing as a side interest because it's not mature yet. So their time can be expensive and they might not be easily available. There's some caveats working with these guys. I think the big takeaway from the mainstream is that it took 60 years to go from Horse in Motion to Citizen Kane. And what that means is that film really established its grammar in the 1940s. Anybody working in traditional film today, they've really inherited this amazing industry. They haven't had to build it from the ground up. So to sum it up, avant-garde, motivated by influence prestige, at the front of the train, constantly forging ahead with experimentation. The work is then picked up by the early adopters. It's then iterated and refined into scalable mass market commodity for consumption by the mainstream. I think of the train sort of traveling down the timelines, right, of arts and media, constantly passing knowledge from the front down to the back. For example, formats and tools have been going through this. They typically start out as custom, handmade, and expensive before becoming standardized and scalable, and that's really what we've seen with 360 video. It used to be GoPros and a lot of hacking, and now we see mature tools and people like Adobe and other companies like that supporting 360 video in mainstream offerings. All right, so now that we have defined the different types of creators, let's talk about how we harness the strengths and build creative teams with these guys. So first, I like to define kind of a lens for what I think successful Wave 1 content looked like. Basically, I see it through a 4-elemental lens. So we have story, subject matter, technical quality, and VR grammar. So story is pretty self-explanatory. You have a plot, characters, arc, acting, all the things that really make, storytelling is not necessarily completely universal, but I think it does transcend medium, and if you understand how to tell it well, you can carry that skill to other places. Subject matter and IP, well, people, I think, really need to care about something in order to follow it into new places that have high friction. And for example, one of the most successful pieces we saw at Jaunt completely surprised us. It was with a YouTube creator named Lily Singh, who has 8 million subscribers. And when we introduced a piece of VR content with her, people just jumped. They could not wait to get into VR to go spend more time with Lily. So it really showed the power of IP and subject matter carrying that audience forward. Technical quality, so we saw a huge diversity of different people making VR content, and a lot of the technical quality could suffer if you didn't know what you were doing. In the early days, you didn't know, you had to figure out how to hack stuff together. So we really wanted stuff that had high visual fidelity, no stitch lines, stereoscopic, spatial audio. So technical quality is another element, I think, for making this stuff mature. And then VR grammar. Do you know how to actually use a 360 camera to try to tell a story with it as opposed to just shooting a regular movie with a 360 camera? How do you leverage the medium? How do you actually tell a story with this stuff? So essentially, the way you cover these elements, in my experience, is you bring the front of the train and the back of the train together. So typically coming from the world of big, established, high-budget media projects, mainstream creators are really strong with story and established IP. And the avant-garde and early adopters are great at figuring out the grammar of the medium and figuring out technical workflow and other key specialized knowledge. So I'll show you guys a couple of examples where I thought this worked really well. All right, so has anyone seen the Always Sunny in Philadelphia piece that Jaunt did? Not very many of you. Oh, interesting. So this came out a couple years ago. Essentially, we got the showrunner, Rob McElhenney, to work with our director, Patrick Meighan. And these guys ended up really trusting each other and getting along. And so Rob was able to bring, this really valuable IP of the TV show, with storytelling and understanding how to use his characters well. And Patrick, who'd been working in the medium since, 2012 at USC, hacking together camera rigs and really figuring this stuff out, he had a really solid understanding of the grammar and the technical workflow. And together, these guys made a very compelling piece of content. We could say the same thing also, I think, went really well with Mr. Robot. People see this piece? A couple more of you guys, right? A little more of a mainstream IP. So again, we had the same pairing of, the showrunner, Sam Esmail, bringing with him, the story and the IP, and Justin Denton from Here Be Dragons, figuring out how to fill in the gaps with the grammar and the technical workflow. So during Wave 1, I watched a lot of 360 video content for Jaunt, and barely any of it nailed all 4 of these elements. You'd see really strong stories with like really weak grammar or technical quality and all sorts of stitching issues, or you'd see like gorgeous footage that was like, perfectly put together with amazing audio and displayed amazing technical prowess, and no story. So it's really hard to get all of these together. It's really hard to kind of create that synergy, but even if you do, it's not really enough with an emerging format. You have to think about how you're going to bring that content to market and distribute it. And this is not obvious when the behaviors are new and foreign to audiences. Nobody is consuming this stuff on a regular basis yet, so with emerging formats, this is the challenge. Not just creating the content, but also building a new industry around it at the same time so you can bring it to market. So where are audiences today? Well, they're all over the place. HMDs are not ubiquitous yet. It's really hard to use them with other people in social settings. PlayStation VR is probably one of the most commercially viable headsets we've had. And it doesn't really work in the living room all that well because it's not that social. You have to like awkwardly wear it and other people are playing video games along with you. It doesn't really fit there yet. Basically people are, spread across all their devices, and we need to be thinking about HMDs as an expansion of that universe. So I think that immersive media really requires content strategy and really leveraging and expanding the existing ecosystem as opposed to trying to just replace it. So I think one of the challenges is that during Wave 1, we didn't think of VR as a multi-platform piece of content. We treated it like traditional media. Namely, we could make great content and the rest of the world would just figure it out. That's not the case. All right, so anyway, I think this is one of the challenges that we need to consider going forward. So there is some stuff that worked really well that came out of Wave 1. One of the most successful pieces was Pearl from Google Spotlight Stories. Do you guys remember this piece? Handful of you guys. Also, I think really, really strong. Beautiful animated short about a father-daughter relationship. It cuts through time. You stay in the car seat, and there's this like constant frame around you. Your vantage point stays the same, so it really uses the grammar of the medium really well. And it did really well at the time for what it was. It was actually nominated for some major film industry awards, and it actually won a Creative Arts Emmy, which is pretty cool. The reason why Pearl could do this is because it was converted from an original 360 video into a traditional short film. And it was actually the traditional short film that was nominated for and won the Creative Arts Emmy. So it was actually built in a game engine, and you could experience it on the Vive in full 6 degrees of freedom. You can then bake it down to a 360 video and play it on those platforms, and you could watch it as a traditional film. So I think basically what this means is that this concept of multi-format IP is working on the interactive side as well. Anyone here experience VR chat yet? Oh, okay, cool. A couple of you guys. The Wild West of all the crazy new things that are happening in the community. VR chat's been around for a long time, but the reason it's been blowing up, and it's totally weird out there. Like it's go in with caution, but it is like, this is 4chan as like embodied as avatars is how I describe it. And the reason it's blowing up is because you can watch it on Twitch. And we've seen video games kind of going this way for a while now. So it's not just about building in one format. It's thinking of your IP and your formats being multi-platform and reaching a wider audience. So to succeed, we need to go further than just creators and content. We need to harness attention where it is today across all of these platforms. And this requires content strategy and planning. Frankly, we really need each other to succeed. We saw tech lead the first wave of VR, and when you lead with technology, you don't give people a reason to go into the goggles. And it's why IP and story are so critically important. These are the elements that are going to get you to go somewhere new. Those are the ones that are going to resonate with your heart and your emotions. And once you're there, we need technology and grammar to make the experience rewarding and actually make it profound. So it's really about developing a holistic relationship between publishers and platform. All right, so at Adjacent, we spend a lot of time thinking about what is this process that will unite us? What will bring these worlds together? The convergence moment of Wave 1 is kind of come and gone now. And another moment of convergence is going to come, But we don't know yet what that's going to look like. And what we do know is that our approach in wave one didn't work very well. We do need a different approach. I think one of the challenges we faced from the past was that we had a lot of bias coming in from mainstream media production. Film and TV can operate a lot like a car assembly line. You create these big budget, media projects. They take a lot of time and energy and money and are difficult to iterate on. And it's a success-driven, hit-driven industry. So if you fail too many times in this industry, you don't have a career anymore. So basically, I think that what that means is that we see a lot of repeating of the same ideas over and over again. And in this environment, it's really hard to take risk on new ideas. So it's kind of something we're stuck in right now. In Silicon Valley, success is iteration-driven. Failure is seen as a necessary step to future success. We're constantly releasing things that are broken, inefficient, or just flat out don't work. And we presume that when you fail, you're going to learn something valuable and use that to iterate forward. So we make use of failure. So it's about release, measure, update, release, measure, update. We see this with platforms, we see this in games. It's a constant cycle of iteration. So with the car analogy, this approach of embracing failure and iteration allows you to build entirely new types of vehicles or completely rethink how transportation is going to work in our lives. I think we're at a cultural moment right now where we have to rethink how entertainment is going to work in the future. The conversation's been going on for a while now. It's one of the reasons Conan was at Google in the first place. And I think with wave one in 2014 to 2016, we saw an acceleration of this conversation. And how we view failure and iteration at the heart, this is at the heart of the conversation between Silicon Valley and Hollywood right now. So when punished, failure results in lack of change and aversion to risk. And when embraced, it can be a critical learning tool that results in rapid iteration and potentially massive disruption. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to create an immersive industry with an approach that embraces failure and iteration. And so I'm going to sort of look at a little bit at how we've kind of done this stuff in the past. Essentially, there's old and new formats and old and new processes. So old process, old format, we've seen that in traditional media with film and television. New process, old format is when Netflix changed the game with SVOD and create a lot of disruption in that industry. With 360, we saw a lot of old process coming in to build out this new media format, and Jaunt was definitely part of trying to apply that strategy and didn't produce the results we wanted. So I'm purporting that for a new format like immersive content, we need a new process, and we call that Lean Studio. So what is Lean Studio? Well, we know there's a lot of critical knowledge being generated at the front of the train. And Lean Studio aims to streamline the process of capturing and disseminating that knowledge down to the mainstream. So we can accelerate and formalize a successful development process for new forms of content. Let's dive into this a little bit at a high level. So traditional formats like film and television, the format and surrounding business model is really well established. You might have a little bit of iteration with the script and pre-production. You might be able to change things in the edit or go out and sort of do pre-screening. But essentially, live action is difficult to iterate. And once you've kind of closed your set and your actors have gone home, you don't have access to resources to really change things as much as you might like to. It also has a well-established path to market, so people don't think about the business model at the same time they're thinking about the format in traditional media. Lean Studio aims to go through all of these steps of traditional media in an iterative, quick loop as quickly as possible to study outcomes and repeat. Because not only is the format unknown, but our path to market is like changing every day. So you're not just iterating content, you're basically iterating an entire industry. At a high level, your goal is to try to maximize the knowledge generated for as little time and money as possible. So maybe you start with a creative idea that you have and you want to prototype that. Or there's a new technology that you want to try learning how to use and need to train up your team to figure out how to use that technology to create the creative idea. Or you're going to figure out some sort of workflow that uses the technology to create the concept. Or you have a new type of team structure. And this one's really important because if you bring on, say, a director who doesn't work well with the other side of the train and there's conflict there, you want to learn that as fast as possible. You don't want to be locked into some big budget, long-term project and suddenly find that your team isn't functional. So, that's a really big one. Of course, you're going to want to try to test publishing to different platforms and learning how those platforms, interact with users and create a relationship. And then, of course, last but not least, market. It's not that you need to test for all these things at once, But I think you can be really discerning and really critical in figuring out, okay, I'm just testing for this one piece of this, and I'm going to try to do that as quickly as possible and then roll my learnings into the next step. So if you look at like big budget traditional projects, you have this massive block of time and money to go establish, something of value. And it's hard to split, I think, traditional media up because there's only so granular you can go in the studio system. But with new formats, and especially with this transition from film and passive media to software-based approaches, my argument is that you can divide that same block of time and money up into smaller discrete pieces in order to get something that works. So let's say that you make 10 television pilots, right? They take a long time to make. They can cost millions of dollars. Each one carries a lot of risk of failure. I think about 8% of pilots are actually cleared to be made into TV series. At the end of making those pilots, you haven't really gained that much new knowledge because it's a mature format in industry. You're not changing that stuff up so much. But if you were to take like one of those budgets and break it into a lean studio project, suddenly you have a different approach. You could do like a 2-week prototyping sprint and try to figure out like, oh wow, a lot of these people didn't work very well, but we had a couple that were really great. We're going to keep them and move them into the next round. We're going to start to add more resources of time and money. We're going to start to focus our teams together and start to figure out how this stuff is working. So you're basically honing in on what's actually going to work in the future and hopefully do that for the smallest amount of time and money as possible. So just to wrap this up, Wave 2 is it's ramping up. It's consisting primarily of location-based entertainment and augmented reality. We're seeing rollout of like full-featured VR experiences, like the Star Wars Disney experience. Anyone done Star Wars Disney yet with The Void? Oh wow, barely any of you. Yeah, so scale is kind of a problem with location-based entertainment. And then Dreamscape with Alien Zoo. Anyone gotten a chance to do that one yet? Wow, nobody. Okay, yeah, see? So these things are going to ramp a little bit more slowly, I think, than the consumer offering. And then Magic Leap finally unveiled their ugly glasses, so that's going to be coming. And you know what comes after ugly glasses? Sexy glasses. We had our first round at this with Snap Spectacles. They're definitely sexy. Didn't quite catch on. They aren't here quite yet. But mark my words, these guys are coming. It's inevitable. And, I cannot wait to look like Tom Cruise in Taking Care of Business. I'm a big fan, and I'm going to celebrate by dancing around in my underwear. So, thanks, guys. So we've got about 20 minutes for Q&A. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll be around for basically the entire week. So please capture my email, my Twitters, all the things. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. So if we can open it up for the floor.
A lot of what you said is learning from the tech industry, going into the media industry, design thinking, lean approaches. What about the other way around?
Oh, totally valid. I mean, we led with technology the first time around and it didn't work. And I'll be the first to admit that the company I came from was engineering dominated. I think this is a common problem with tech, is that we don't think about what's in it for the user, why should they care? There's this really rich culture of like the language and the merit of Hollywood is emotional connection, and if you don't connect with something emotionally, it's not going to work. We need that desperately, and so obviously my bias and my side is more on the Silicon Valley side, but I'm trying to figure out how you bring those two worlds together and really start to ask why is this important? Why do people need this in their lives? Why will they actually want to go through all the friction points to connect? And I think the lesson here is that people already are fans of big IP, of established worlds and established ideas. And we need to give those things merit and we need to give those things credibility. The challenge is finding the right mindset in that creative pool to find the right combinations to build the new teams. And the challenge that I saw from the Hollywood side is that you need to be able to give trust and new voices to new types of creators. And it was very split between like, oh, well, these people don't really have a voice. They don't really matter in the same way because they don't come from an established world. So I think the argument is how to figure out how to harness the right people and the right talented creators in that pool to create that synergy that we need. Yeah, here.
One thing that you didn't mention that I think was really important with the convergence of Google Cardboard into the mainstream is cost. I know that's a big barrier for many people with access to like Vibes and presumably with those goggles that you had up on the screen is cost. And do you think that that's going to play a big role in the second wave of conversions?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it as a consumer offering, yes. I mean, let me put it this way. Smartphones, unsubsidized, cost, what, like $800 or $1,000? They're very expensive, right? But we love these things and we need them. And they're subsidized by the fact that we pay for data plans. So if you can come up with like a reason to need it, people will pay, right? I think the challenge with cardboard is that, yeah, I gave people a taste, but then people thought that that was VR. For example, we did a 4-week beta test of our VR viewer at the end of 2015 to see how people would respond to it. And the complaint was, and I was the user experience designer at the time, so the concern was, is this interface going to work? Because it was a gaze-based interface, which is really weird and new. People were able to figure out the interface, no problem. That was not the challenge. The problem was that cardboard was uncomfortable and made them go cross-eyed, and they didn't know how to assemble it. And on the other side of that, we didn't have enough content being released into the ecosystem at the time to create a consumption habit. So we do need to make things affordable, but I think there's a line between affordability and value that cross over. And I think, I don't know if Google Cardboard was the right direction to go or not. It certainly seeded a lot of interest, but if people will go, okay, I tried VR and it was that terrible cardboard thing and I'm not interested now, that's a problem for us. However, sexy glasses are coming and people already wear glasses and are used to paying $300 or more for like a nice pair of whatever. So, I think there's different factors that come together to decide if it was a good idea or not. I also look at, Daydream. I look at Samsung Gear VR as part of that sort of wave. And, those devices are what, $99? And how many people use their Samsung Gear VRs on a regular basis? Most of them are gathering dust on shelves. So price matters, but it needs to be meaningful for you to actually use it on a regular basis. Yeah, right there.
What do you think about the standalone headsets such as Oculus Go from Facebook?
It's a good question. So basically Oculus, so what do I think of Oculus Go? So Oculus Go is basically taking, limiting the phone and making it all-in-one for like $200. It's bringing the price point down and it's making the ease of use go up, but you still can't move around in it, right? And I think it still has the same social issues of isolation and where do you use this thing in your life. So yeah, we need to solve for multiple factors, and price and ease of use is certainly part of that for sure. But the social and cultural issues are still the same. And that's why actually I'm much more excited about sexy glasses, is because sexy glasses allow me to like not look dorky and see my friends through them and actually interact with them. I actually got to try a mixed reality headset like a year ago. And even though it was like the dorkiest thing I've ever seen in my life, I was using it in a Starbucks, but I could see the world through the headset and my friend. And I kind of forgot that I was wearing it for a minute. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really profound. Whereas like I put on my Gear VR and not only do I look dorky, but like I've lost my proprioception to the outside world. So I think it's a confluence of like social and cultural aspects as well as cost and ease of use. Here in the front.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about the direction of live action 360 cinematic content. Is volumetric capturing going to be part and parcel of extending that to new ground? I mean, there's a lot of really great nonfiction out in 360, but not a lot of good narrative content.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the challenge is that good storytelling typically, at least from the traditional film side, costs money. A lot of their talented writers and directors and producers already have well-paying jobs like creating TV shows and movies, and we really want them to come over. But again, to use the back of the train, front of the train analogy, if you have a stable career and you already get to express yourself and you're rewarded for it, what incentivizes you to take risk? And I don't know if we've really incentivized people yet because there isn't a mature industry. It's kind of that chicken and the egg thing. I do think that volumetric is very interesting. My bias is more from the video game side, and I believe that the characters of the future are ones you can talk to and interact with and not passively observe. And we're going to hit another tipping point where AI and natural language processing creates like a quantum leap in how Siri works. And suddenly it's a character. And I'm like, hey, Siri. And it's like, hey. And I'm like, holy crap, it's talking to me. And it's doing things now, right? And at that point, we ever want to like watch a recording again when the character can interact with me? I don't know. I mean, I think I just got an Amazon Echo in my home, and now I know how to yell at my stereo. And even though it's spying on me and probably collecting data that I should be worried about, it's so convenient. I just want to yell at every device in my home now and make it do stuff. So, again, it's like one's like the old model that's a little bit more linear, passive, and the other's more interactive. And, it's hard to say, but I think there's always applications for this stuff, but at the end of the day, once you cross a certain threshold, it's hard to go back. Yeah. Here?
So you mentioned that a lot of centennials are not adopting traditional media such as Facebook. I'm wondering if you think we'll see a similar divide with content for XR, where centennials, citizens of smartphones will consume drastically different content than everyone older than them.
All right, so will centennials consume immersive media more so than other generations? I don't think they're going to consume the same type of media because they're already not consuming the same type of media. I'm 38, so I'm right on the cusp of millennial and Gen Y. And it's like night and day between me and somebody who, comes to that generation. Like I don't use, Snapchat has like become like a dominant platform for communication. And they're watching YouTube influencers and predominantly spending their time there. I prefer like watching, big budget television and movies and, invested in like a home theater system, and they're just on their smartphones watching video in portrait mode. So, I'm not even that old, And I tell this to film people and they're just like freaking out because they're like, oh no, my vision isn't being consumed. I'm like, it's not your vision anymore, man. Like you had like 100 years to have your time in the sun, and, it's hard to. I think yes, there's a big behavior shift happening, and from what I've seen from the people who really dig into this and are truly experts on centennials, the rest of the generations are going to have to catch up to them because they're the ones who are going to set the pace. So yeah, that behavior is going to continue to be different. And are they more likely to embrace immersive media? Maybe. I don't know. They certainly don't care about their data being sucked up as long as there's something useful for them. So they're the generation that's like, it's my smartphone and I love it. And now I can wear my smartphone on my face and do all the same things. Probably going to be okay with that. We'll see. But hard to predict. Yes?
Past just sexy glasses, is there anything you see that shows a lot of promise to bring, to make it a mass market thing, to make it like something that people are going to say, yeah, that thing, I really want that in my life. Past just sexy glasses, like software, hardware.
Well, I mean, in terms of like immersive devices or content or
experiences, contents like VR chat, like is there some beacon right now that's like, yes, these guys are doing it right. They're gonna kill around.
Yeah, well, everyone keeps asking for that, right? I mean, look, I think that these things go in waves, and part of wave 2 is that we're moving into tools of creation. Like, I mean, whenever, not that I use tilt brush on a regular basis, but that was one of the most like wildest moments I've ever had. And I think for a lot of people, they go, oh, you can do this with it. Like, this is something I just couldn't do in any other medium, right? Is to like draw spatially and like walk through my drawing. I think we're going to see a lot more aha moments like that shape up. I think, you've seen the Microsoft HoloLens demos where they have, your family member in another physical space, but then they're like beamed into the room with you and you're interacting with them. I mean, the implications for changing industries with that is just profound. Not just connections to family members, but business travel and working in general, like remote versus in teams. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about how much of there's such a divide right now, I think, between the digital flat 2D screens of our lives and then that visceral rich experience of like real life and people with me and authenticity and all these things. And for better or worse, as the technology gets better and better, that's going to blend more and more, right? And so it's not that I can point to one beacon. I think it's more like we see these trends coming, and it raises a lot of deep, profound challenges for us as a society. Like fake news is in full swing now, and now you're seeing deep fakes and the ability to like, throw Putin's face on whoever you want. Like that's some weird stuff. And then suddenly that's going to be on my face perpetually. Like it's almost like the death of reality, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, right? And so I think there's a lot of promise for positive, but it's kind of like the internet, right? There's a lot of great things about the web, and there's a lot of really terrible things about the web. And I think immersive media is not going to be any different. But it's not that there's one signpost thing. For me personally, I like rich, deep, interactive stories. And it's always been I've always kind of been like kind of between the avant-garde and the early adopter, like doing things that don't pay any money, but they're really creatively satisfying, and I think the challenge is when does that mature into something cool? But it's, there's not one thing I would point to right now. In the back?
I feel like the same issue has been iterated in several different ways as far as content creators creating content that they just hope that the general audience will latch on to. How do you have you seen any trends front end working back as far as industries, commercial, or even just simply genres that have value added to them by VR?
By VR or by the avant-garde? Oh, by immersive media. Well, there's a lot of enterprise stuff that's shaping up that people really seem to love. And we saw the same thing with Google Glass, right? It was like, here's a consumer offering, and people go, I don't want that. And the medical professionals are like, this is the best thing ever because it's streamlining patient intake. And now Google, I guess, has relaunched that product as an enterprise-based thing. There's always, for whatever reason, we tend to try to go consumer first, and I think everyone just wants to be the next Steve Jobs and like, changed your life with a new device, I'm so great. And you forget about the things that took shape before that. So enterprise is always a better bet to go. We're seeing a lot of augmented reality really shaping those industries first because you don't have to worry about stock. Like I don't need to wear sexy glasses at work. I can wear ugly glasses at work or dorky visor at work, and it's fine because I'm at work, right? And so we have different constraints. ODG is one of the companies developing military-grade heads-up display technology, and they're really far ahead now in getting to sexy glasses because they've been doing dorky glasses for a long time and adding a lot of value in certain industries. So I think that it's broad-reaching in terms of how enterprise converts to consumer. And honestly, if you want to make money in the industry right now, enterprise is probably a much safer way to go. But my passion is still around the storytelling side, and I think we've seen a lot of people invest in early adopter and avant-garde in unsmart ways. Like you have, like Story Studio was very expensive and didn't really, I think, add the value it intended to back to the industry. But that was a mainstream company like Facebook saying, I'm going to create an early adopter and avant-garde entity inside of my company, right? And if you think about other companies that do this, agencies, for example, their entire goal, their job is to find cool out there stuff and bring it as value propositions for mainstream clients and companies in the form of marketing and advertising and PR. So so there's examples out there, but it's again, it hasn't like tipped yet into something that obviously we all want in our daily lives. Here in the front.
So it seems like for a lot of the film and media stuff we talk about is more VR focused as opposed to AR. Do you think in the future there's going to be VR is like for film adaptations and traditional media like coming into XR space, or is there going to be like is the VR AR divide going to go away and there's going to be a single platform hardware device that does something on the continuum, or is there going to be VR is for like what film and media will become in the future, and AR is for like productivity or social stuff?
Yeah, okay, so the question is, are these platforms going to converge or are they going to stay separate? So let me put it this way. I think that the spaces that we occupy in our lives, those don't change. In the home, we have typically four. We have the hearth space, which is currently the flat screen TV. We've got the workbench, which is like a PC. Reading nook, which is like an iPad, and then the anywhere space, which is currently our phones, now becoming watches, and then probably pretty soon sexy glasses, right? The challenge is that the anywhere space, the devices can actually be used in any of the other spaces. Not to mention the venue, which is like the church or the mall or the arcade or the theater or the sports stadium or whatever, right? And that smartphone is now traveling to all of those spaces. And if you're a centennial, you're like, all right, I'm in the living room, but I'm using this thing to maybe control that thing, but like together but not together kind of stuff. So suddenly, if your proprioception is being swapped out, because that's really what augmented reality is, right? It's a layer of proprioception. You could theoretically wear the same device and then, I'm at work, so it makes a computer-like, workbench experience for me. I'm at the mall, it's helping me like wayfind my way, to, go comparison shop for something. I'm in the living room, we're all playing a big, mixed reality board game together or whatever it is. I think that's probably more likely than, we're going to stay on dedicated devices. But, the mouse and keyboard's hard to replace, to be honest. It's going to be a while until we're minority reporting our way through PowerPoint. I don't think that, it's spreadsheets. It's like, this is so exhausting. I just want my mouse and keyboard back. So anyway, here.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have, this might be kind of a broad question, but if you could break it down to a couple of things that you see between wave one of VR to now on the storytelling side, things that are changing and drawing the attention of the user, things like that. And then side question to that is how you feel about, with live appearances, especially in music and things like that, the possibility of smaller disposable AR units being used for more of a mass presentation. If you see that is possible, like an IMAX 3D kind of thing, like for a bigger audience to experience together.
All right, so that was a two-part question, but I kind of lost the first part. So the second part was, can you say it back, but like really?
The second part is how you see AR integrating into live gatherings.
Oh, right, okay.
Now being with piracy and things with music, live appearances, especially in music, are a really big gathering for people to come together and with tech and presentation and AV going up.
I got it,
For
yeah.
those, if there's room, you think, for smaller disposable units to be used to integrate the mass audience, you throw it away and people out.
Right. I hear you. Well, so I mean, cardboard was kind of one of those first disposable units, right? And personally, just my personal ethos, I hate disposable stuff. I like trying to not create trash, and unfortunately, I'm like kind of alone in that fight for the most part. But I think to your point, music went through a really awkward transition, with Napster and MP3s and all this sort of stuff. And now, to your point, musicians make a living through creating experiences for their fans. And the music is really just advertising, right? So the question is, how can you maybe enhance the venue experience of music with augmented reality? Well, I think you can. I think people have gotten smart doing it with phones already and figuring out ways to create audience engagement. So, if you think about it, if the glasses replace the phone or subsidize that, and suddenly like I show up to, I don't know, like Dead Mouse, and like the visuals are like really all around me, and everyone gets like skinned as a Dead Mouse avatar, like that could be cool. Could go really badly depending on what you've consumed that day, but might be really good. But I think basically artists are now in control of creating other aspects of your reality. And if we trust them and allow them to do that, that's going to be really cool. In terms of disposable aspects, I would rather go try to create some sort of app phone thing, because apps are already disposable. I mean, people hate installing apps. How many apps you got on your phone? You don't want more apps, but hey, maybe this will be cool, right? So I think that it's just finding a balance between, again, value versus friction to make people do certain things.
Do you think a phone is as immersive as when I said disposable, that might have been the wrong word, I guess a reusable unit that you would check out and return. Do you think?
Oh, like 3D glasses, like the movie theater kind of thing?
But like an AR version, like the cool glasses, but
Maybe.
Something that you could. Do you think that using your phone is as immersive in your extensive experience in this as would be using something that you could check out and return?
I mean, I've never been through that scenario before, but just to kind of explore that for a minute. I mean, no, doing AR on your phone, like, with Magic Window, it's kind of an awkward in-between experience, right? However, using your phone to do something really engaging that isn't necessarily augmented reality can be really cool. I think the other side of it is the sort of Instagrammable moment that's kind of become kind of, par for the course. Like, that's a really critical piece of how people relate to experiences right now. So I don't think it's a very far-fetched idea that you could do something more with that. But again, there's got to be a cost differentiator that says, hey, you don't already own these things, but here's like a really cheap version that you can put on your face, and then there's like economics to it that would have to come into play to make that viable. But we still go to 3D movies and rent glasses and put them on there, but that's like one of the only examples I can think of. So maybe, but I think at the end of the day, you have to tap into where consumer behavior is and then build on top of it, as opposed to like try to actively insert a new behavior. That's where friction comes in. We had a question back here or no? Back? Yes.
Do you know if anybody has really cracked the code as far as social VR is concerned? Or is that
Well, when you say crack the code, do you mean like something that we think is going to like scale and be viable, or? Well, let me say this. So have we cracked the code on social VR? So VR chat, like, it's the Wild West, man. You want to be racist in VR chat? You're going to be racist in VR chat. You want to like, dress up as some funky avatar or like act out all the crazy stuff on the internet? It's happening. And people are going there because they can express themselves. Whereas like Facebook and other big companies are trying to like sanitize things and do like the alt space thing where you can't express yourself, and it sucks. I think there's like 700 active users at a time in VR chat, which is amazing for where the industry. There's like, 10 to 12 in Sansar and High Fidelity. There's, not many people there. So I think cracking the code is like, you have to let people express themselves. That's how the internet works. And then you have to figure out the right social boundaries and constraints to let them like govern themselves, right? Because that's how life works. Like if you have a certain strong mindset and you only want to, unfortunately, be amongst people that share that mindset, you're going to go to that place where you can do that. The internet's not any different. And I think my hope is that we can kind of like use that to help people understand new things and broaden perspective and change mindsets. But we have to start where people are at. And right now it's about allowing them the Wild West. So VR chat is the closest that we've seen to that so far. Yes? We got like 20 seconds left, so this is probably the last one.
So just on a similar note to that, I saw this article the other week that was just women don't like VR chat, and the gist of the article was they don't like it because VR chat is really sexist and horrible.
Yeah, there's like the internet.
If you're like a minority, and if you go into a space like that and you're not in the, the sort of people who are already there, those sort of spaces belong to the people who drive everybody out of those spaces. And I'm wondering if you see that sort of like a balance between being able to express themselves without driving people that aren't them out of those spaces.
I think, again, it's just how democratization slowly takes place over time, right? I mean, so in a mature space like the App Store, I know we're at time, so this will be the last one. You have to, you have like social networking apps for women to find, like female friends and people that they want to connect with. And I don't know if that could have happened from day one. Maybe it could have, maybe it couldn't, but it did happen. And I think it's a sign of maturity that you get granularity in, the types of communities and the types of experiences you can create for people. VR is dominated by like gamer nerd culture, for better or worse. And those guys are going to help drive it forward, but clearly it's not the end of the road, right? Just like how when the internet first started, it was, kind of a rough place, right? And dominated by nerds and probably, a lot of the same demographics. But over time, things mature, democratize, become affordable, become familiar, friendly, accessible, and ultimately controllable by communities to make them what they want. And I think it's inevitable we will see that. We're definitely not there today. All right, we're at time. I'll be around. I'd love to take more of your questions, so come find me. Thanks again, guys.